So the next speaker is Chris Collega, and I was explicitly told that there's no time for questions, so we'll use all these 10 minutes.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. Thank you so much. So, my name is Chris Collega, and I am Axel Claremans' philosophical Landsknecht. And I start with a disclaimer. So what I'm going to present here is a new project that's an offshoot of another project that we have with Axel and Alex. Yeah, quite confusing. Alex is a great philosopher from Canada who has now a great book about William James that I highly recommend. And secondly, it's a work in progress, so don't expect too much. And you will also maybe know why at the end of this talk. So, does the access phenomenal consciousness distinction bear the marks of a degenerative research program? Well, answering this question depends crucially on two things, right? First of all, what is a degenerative research program? So, the methodology of scientific research programs was a meta-theoretical framework proposed by Imre Lakatos in the 70s, and maybe actually even back in the 60s. And it's supposed to be an alternative for the deductive nomological view of how theories and theory revision proceeds in science. So Lakatos's idea was that science proceeds by constructing these scientific research programs which consist of a hard core of theoretical hypotheses which are surrounded by a belt of malleable, exchangeable, updatable auxiliary hypotheses that relate the hard theoretical core to the empirical data. And if you've been to the tutorial from Liat Mudrik's group, then you've already heard about this. It's a very nice framework because it serves to solve several problems. One of the problems is the so-called Quine-Duhem problem, or the theory-ladenness of observation. It kind of explains how some theoretical assumptions relate to the data via the auxiliary hypotheses. And the other nice feature of this framework is that it also allows us to talk about some normative aspects of scientific research programs, because research programs can be progressive or degenerative. A research program that's progressive is constantly producing new predictions and it's gathering new data and it's slowly updating itself, whereas a research program that's degenerative is one which fails to produce new predictions, so it at some point stops being productive in the empirical way. And also it has a problem with accounting for new evidence, right? So new evidence pops up, you cannot accommodate that within your core, current state of your research program. Maybe these new data were unpredicted by not entailed by the core hypotheses, so you start to revise your auxiliary hypotheses in response to the incoming data just to protect the core hypothesis, right? Not unlike some famous framework in computational neuroscience these days. So that's when it becomes degenerative and it kind of stops being productive and people are just focusing on, standing their ground rather than moving on to a new research program, kind of doing a paradigm shift if you want to be Kuhnian or something like that. Okay. The second aspect is, of course, the access phenomenal consciousness distinction that I'm sure you're all familiar with. It was introduced 30 years ago by Ned Block, and it, of course, tracks the difference between the qualitative aspect or the subjective what is likeness of an experience and the functional aspects of conscious experience related to reportability or access to what we would call executive functions. And an important reason why I think it's interesting to apply the Lakatosian lens to the AP consciousness distinction is, first of all, that the distinction originally was proposed as a conceptual distinction and is actually empirically inert by itself. So if you go back to the classic BBS paper, Ned is motivated by some empirical findings, but he actually says these findings don't actually show the distinction as an ontological distinction. He's only arguing for a conceptual part. So for example, he says famously that blind sight is not a demonstration of dissociation between access and phenomenal consciousness. You would need super blind sight, which is something that we've never observed yet. And so to make this distinction empirically viable and to argue for the fact that it tracks an ontological difference, Block introduced two auxiliary hypotheses, the overflow hypothesis, so this idea that conscious perception is richer than the bandwidth of cognitive processing and that phenomenal consciousness overflows access, and the dual NCC hypothesis, which is this idea that phenomenal consciousness and access consciousness will come with some kind of two distinct groups or clusters of neural correlates, and that these clusters or types or whatever you want to call them will be dissociable in principle, right? So you will be able to get one without the other. in the brain. And finally, it's been 30 years. So we should be able to say something about the empirical track record of how the AP distinction has been faring empirically. It's not like it was introduced 2 days ago. So this is why I'm interested in Lakatos, because Lakatos was also interested in the dynamics of how these research programs evolve over time. So does it bear the marks of degeneration? I'm going to be disappointing here because it's preliminary results, and I've been gathering some stuff. I will tell you more in a second. But basically, the AP distinction does produce new research, and sometimes it's very good research, like the recent paper from Liad Mudrik's group by Amir et al. But it's unclear whether it actually produces new predictions. So that study is an adaptation of an existing paradigm to a different sensory modality. It's very rigorous, it's very good, but it's not clear that it's actually testing a new prediction. Secondly, there are studies that call into question the validity of the data on which the overflow hypothesis was founded. So overflow hypothesis was supposed to be best at explaining verbal reports in Sperling change detection task. Turns out it might not. And on the other hand, Block keeps moving the goalpost for dual NCC. So people thought that they caught it when they introduced neuroport paradigms, and then he came out and he said, no, we need a no cognition paradigm. And people like Phillips and Morales have convincingly, in my opinion, argued that he's kind of sending us on a snipe hunt, right? We're looking for something that we can just in principle not find. And I must tell you, this is where the talk pivots, because I've been lying to you. This is not a talk. This is a teaser for a pirate poster that I will hang up downstairs, and you can talk to me in the coffee break after our talk. And let me just motivate why I want to do this. First of all, there's a great tradition at ASSC. 10 years ago at my first ASSC, I saw this poster, which was a poster by a disgruntled professor who was offered a poster spot instead of a talk. So he decided to do this and give what Micah Allen called a heretical talk in the corridor. I was there, it was my first ASSC, I saw this poster and I thought, who is this guy? Well, this guy is my boss now. It was Axel Clermont. And Axel was at the time the president of ASSC, so he could do this. I'm just a humble postdoc, so I will just post a poster on a door somewhere. Well, downstairs you'll probably find it easily. So I would like to keep up this tradition. I think it's important. It's a fun joke. But there's another reason, which is basically that I think we should protest the length of these sessions, because here's the data. We're right now at 10 minutes. In Pasadena in 2005, we were at 30 minutes with Q&A. In Paris, it was 20. If we keep this trend going, in 10 years, we will have 0 minutes for a talk. And of course, this is a joke. But I think that, and I've seen already many great talks, many people can deliver a great talk in 10 minutes, but I think we should also consider the fact that this is a little bit non-inclusive to make the windows so short, because not everyone is working with the same capacities, abilities, and so on. So I think people don't have the time to express themselves, perhaps. And also, I would like to sometimes ask questions after talks. But if you want to ask questions after this talk, you can find me. This is not the poster. This is where the poster will be. It's the gray, dirty door downstairs. I'll see you in the coffee break. Thank you so much.